Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Kevin Shtofman. He is a global head at Sherry, a leading real estate data platform. And we'll learn about how to use data, the tools and strategies reshaping global markets today. So we'll talk about all this and much more. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Yeah, great to be on.
Welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Kevin. And I'm sure not just in India, which also has a very fledgling real estate market, not only in India, but also a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about data. We'll talk about how one can future proof real estate investments with data. But before that, let's understand a bit about your journey, your background, so that audience knows who they are listening to.
Sure. I started my career in 2004, right after college. I was in finance, big bulge bracket bank called Morgan Stanley. I was there for a couple of years. Then I got an MBA. And while I was doing my MBA, the great financial crisis happened. So Lehman crashed, Bank of America bought Countrywide, all the things that happened there. And so real estate was in a turmoil market. And because of that, I couldn't go back into investment banking when I graduated. So I switched to consulting. And when I got into consulting, I was put in the real estate technology group. So I spent 9 years in real estate technology, never went back to banking. And in 2019, I became the COO of a property technology startup. And I've been in prop tech now for 6 years.
Wonderful, wonderful, Kevin. So to understand, you talked about real estate, technologies. Help us understand for a common person. They know about real estate. They know also about the new technologies that one uses either in construction or on. But when you talk about real estate technology, what does it mean as of today?
Yeah, anything hardware or software that's going to be used to improve the built world environment, right? Anything that's going to make your day-to-day job easier, right? Whether you're in accounting, whether you're in leasing, whether you're in acquisitions, whether you're in capital raising, technology, in my opinion, enables you to communicate better with your employees, communicate better with your tenants, communicate better with your investors, collate and integrate information together so that each team across a company can talk to one another better and make decisions faster. And if you're a small person on your own trying to run your own company, now you can do that with just a couple employees. And that was impossible 5 years ago.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nowhere there is a talk about customers, the people who are actually using those buildings and houses and all. Why is it so? Or is it understandable? Or is this technology also for them in some way or the other impacting them, or only for the luxury housing sector? Help us understand from that point of view.
So it varies very widely on property type. So if you are in a commercial office tower, your communications with your tenants are uncommon, right? You might have a hospitality element in the building and the amenities that you provide and the way that you book those amenities and communicate with in-person staff. But technology is meant really to be used and not seen or heard. That's very different if you're in a multifamily apartment complex or a hotel or a retail store. That's B2C, right? You're dealing directly with the consumers of the products inside your buildings. And so technology is much more at the forefront.
Absolutely. So let us understand. You have been into this particular technology side of real estate since quite some time.
Yep.
Earlier on, without AI, how was that world? With AI, how is this world now?
So pre-AI, we were doing most of what we were doing now, but it took 3 times as long, required a lot more people, and there were more often mistakes occurring that we would have to manually fix. Fast forward to today, and very much today, right? When AI was introduced in our world 3 years ago, it wasn't very good. It was kind of laughable. We're like, AI is not replacing people. But today, that's not true. AI makes things very, very fast and a lot more seamless, and also a lot more risky. When you have a chatbot communicating with a tenant, the, the recommendations they are providing is only as good as the data that's sitting underneath that they're operating from. And if that data is bad, the recommendations are going to be bad. So the opportunity is massive, but so is the risk.
Absolutely. And good you brought the data part here, because let's understand the data part here itself. What is data in real estate? We can understand a bit, but then there must be, when you say the data has to be correct, help us understand what data is in real estate today.
So there's information about the building itself, right? It's units, it's suites, it's leases, it's amenities, it's equipment inside. There's information about the geospatial area near the building, the parcel boundary, the zoning, the addresses, the people, the foot traffic interacting in or near the building, the infrastructure of the building, the public transportation near the building, the points of interest that are walkable from the building. And then there's also operational information. Who's booking space, who's submitting a work order for maintenance, who's communicating social media about the building, what events are going on at the building. The data is a vast universe, and you don't really think about it, but real estate data is so deep and wide.
Absolutely. So let's understand, about your company, Sherry. It is the largest real estate data management platform, as you call it. So I want to understand what sort of a data. Does it hold all this data about other companies? I want to understand from its functioning. Means, does it hold data about everything, about other buildings, other companies, everything that you can think of? Help us understand from that point of view.
Yeah, so the platform itself is meant to be infrastructure and is meant to connect any piece of data that you as a real estate investor or manager or operator or advisor use in your job. So if you store your accounting data in one system, your leasing and marketing data in another system, your capital raising information in another system, and system could mean Excel spreadsheets, by the way. We integrate all of that information, we connect it, and we collect it into one platform, our platform, into one model, so that you can use that information across the entirety of your company. That's whether you have multiple property types, if you're in multiple geographic regions, if you're across multiple life cycle stages. So a company that does ground up construction and development and also manages the building and also invests in other buildings, right? Their information is spread deep and wide, and we bring it all together. And that includes any data that you as a company might buy from the market. So you might buy demographic data or sales or lease comps data or foot traffic information or weather related risk data. We also bring in the data that you buy from the data that you own and put it all into a single model.
Absolutely. So the data that you generate from your other sources, wherever, which makes it interesting for your, for your clients to come into the system, is that data also publicly available or only on your platform? I want to understand from a data privacy point of view. Means I stay in a building, and if that data is already with you, then that can also go out anywhere else, and I will not be as secure as I think I am and may have paid for it.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, there are a lot of strict laws about data privacy, especially in the EMEA region. So we're SOC compliant, we're ISO compliant. We have to adhere by GDPR, and then even in America, there are a couple states like California that require people to be anonymous. So if you come into our building, even if a badge gets swiped, and so we have your name and birthday and maybe what unit you're in and what your lease is, everything gets anonymized and it sits in our multi-tenant environment, and a client can only see their own data. They can't see others. We haven't yet got to the point where any of our clients want to sell their data in the marketplace. That day may come where clients want to monetize what they think is proprietary information. But so far, they would like to keep that advantage to themselves.
Right. But if they become your clients, they can certainly get access to the data that you guys have collected over the years. Can they do that, or is it not allowed? Because that data is also, in a sense, proprietary if we understand it from that point of view.
Yeah. So any data that we've gathered into our platform that comes from public sources, so say the county tax assessor or the municipal city council meetings, right? All of that information, we've built a knowledge graph to get all of that data into one place, and that combined data set that's been aggregated can be purchased, and a lot of our clients purchase it because they then will compare their records to official government records, and they will see where the discrepancies are, because a lot of times people only report to government agencies once a year, but the dynamics of a property are changing very often, almost every day.
Absolutely. So your platform hosts over $3 trillion in transactions data. What does that mean?
So any set of information that's come into our platform from our partners, when I say partners, I mean MSCI or S&P or Placer AI, right? It's like all of this information about where people are moving, what buildings are getting purchased for how much, what are the common rental rates across property types in many different markets. All of that information sits inside our platform going back a handful of years historically. And that adds up to trillions of dollars in transactions and owned assets. So any Cherry client can choose to go transact with those market providers and buy that data themselves, and then they will pay us to connect it with the other data they buy. So our partners make the same amount of money they would if someone bought it from us or bought it from them directly. We don't get a commission, because we just want everybody to have the same playing field. But then we get paid to connect it all together into one model. Because back to AI, if you are a ground up developer, or you're a capital allocator and you're looking for pieces of land to buy or buildings to buy, you want those recommendations from AI to be built on the most robust and deep data set that it can, right? What buildings are already being built right now? You need permitting data, you need zoning data. What other buildings might compete in supply with the one that I own near me? You also might want to know what weather-related risks could be coming. You might want to know what legislation is being discussed in your local city council. You want to know what other buildings are selling for near you, so that if you run your building well, you could make a profit on the back end. All of that is in one model available to everybody across the company once it's been connected through Cherry.
Absolutely. So is your data bank, it's only about the US or outside the US too?
Yeah, so we're a global company. We have clients in 17 countries, but the underlying public data infrastructure and our knowledge graph is only for the US and Canada. We've started building out parts of Western Europe, but I got to tell you, the data environment in that part of the world is so fragmented. You in the US, you just have like these companies that have aggregated everything together into one data set. It just hasn't happened in Europe and in Asia. Everything is kind of domiciled in each country, in each province within the country, and pulling that together, stitching it together, is a fairly complex and time intensive exercise, and we just don't have enough clients yet to justify that.
Absolutely. So you have clients like companies, or even for those people who are into real estate investment, as you know, uh, high net worth individuals, something like that. How does your data get used either by individuals, HNIs, or even bigger clients?
So at the moment, we're mainly an enterprise company. So most of our clients would be the real estate arm of a bank, or the real estate arm of an insurance company, or the real estate funds within a pension fund or a sovereign wealth fund or an endowment, or a publicly traded REIT. We probably bottom out at around it'd be 100,000 square meters, million square feet commercially, or about 1,500 to 2,000 multifamily units. That's when the economics start to make sense for someone that's buying our platform. And we're trying to figure out how to create something for the individual user the person who's getting into real estate for the first time, and they've got a couple $1,000,000 and they're buying some property. Those high net worth people, we just don't have the solution for that yet. So my recommendation instead is to become quite skilled with a lot of the AI platforms that are out there, because you can get a lot of interesting value from public data that's just fed into these LLMs. And the LLM I recommend is going to differ for your use. So if you're doing general use of the market, and you want to tug the whole internet and you want to see what news is out there, the latest ChatGPT iteration is great. If you live inside of the Google world, and so you have Gmail and you have Google Drive storing your files, then Gemini is the way to go. If you're a Microsoft shop, Copilot is the way to go. But if you're building financial models to put together an underlying underwriting investment, I would be using Claude, because they're the best financial modeling AI.
Absolutely. Now, looking from a real estate investment point of view, how does a small investor, mid-sized investor, or a bigger investor utilize whatever data, either through your company or whatever way they can gather, as you said, about publicly available data? How do you use that data?
So most of the time, people are going to use public data because they just want to spot check what they think the building might be worth, right? They're using it to do an automated valuation model and to compare that with the tax assessed value of the building or the piece of land. Because as you buy that piece of land of the building, you're going to have to pay taxes on it every year, and you're going to need to compare the taxes that you're paying to the operating income that you're going to get from owning the asset. And that's regardless of property type, whether you're buying a warehouse, whether you're buying a strip center with retail stores, whether you're buying a single family home that you're going to rent out to some sort of family. You just need to know taxes versus other expenses versus income coming in the door, and whether you're going to be able to cash flow. And a lot of public data is available around that, right? Where are people moving? What's the average salary? What are the job openings? All of that, most of that is public information, because there's companies that try to create marketplaces around it. So they provide free versions of it, which means the LLM, the AI models, have that same data. So using that can be very advantageous. As you become a much bigger company, you have a bigger budget to buy private data. And so that's where the bigger companies are trying to build an advantage. They're trying to buy data that's private and put it together into one model so that they can act faster than the wider public markets.
Absolutely. So, how is it impacting the general, real estate market? Because in the real estate market, there are so many players, real estate agents, smaller companies, bigger companies, insurance companies, banks, and then there are the large, bigger players who have the wherewithal to buy and play with data. Does that make an uneven playing field? How is it getting impacted now? How do you see it getting impacted in the coming future? And that there is no way out of the big data, if we can call it that way.
Yeah, I think the big players will continue to get bigger, just because it's a bit of a flywheel. It's a cycle. They buy more information, they get more deals, they raise more money. But this environment has also unlocked a lot of value to the individual investor and user, right? The democratization of data has now meant that when I go try to get financing for a house or for a building, the information I have at my disposal is pretty amazing. So like, it allows an individual person to actually negotiate with a lender or a property and casualty insurance broker, or an advisor to the building. Like, you have so much more information at your own individual disposal that just did not exist even just before COVID. So for people that are like ambitious and enterprising and are willing to do a little research on the front end, you will be very well prepared to find the right advisors and the right deals, quite frankly, without having employees and without having to pay atrocious amounts of fees. That's where it's been helpful to the common user.
Absolutely. So tomorrow, I think agents and anyone who want to get associated with as a buyer, they would always look for a agent or real estate person who is more clued into what is happening in terms of data. Am I right to understand this way, Kevin?
So it depends again on the property type. If you're talking about just individual homes, there's so much public data out there, and at least in the United States, most homes that are go up for sale, they're listed on a platform called the Multiple Listing Service, the MLS, and all of the MLSs typically get pulled into Zillow and Redfin and all these other public listings, which is now why you have a big competition between a publicly traded real estate company called Compass, which is now offering private listings that don't go on the public MLS. Which it's very interesting approach. There's everyone who gets access to the large data set, and then there's folks who always want to remain exclusive. The same thing is happening with industrial buildings, office towers, retail buildings. People are trying to keep a lot of that data out of the public domain to get, more exclusive listings. But that's a double-edged sword, because then you might not find the perfect buyer. And if you don't have a lot of bids on your property, the price doesn't go up. There's no competition. So it's depends on the strategy that you want as a real estate investor.
Absolutely. One more thing I want to understand is the sanctity of the data. Data is very good. We can understand it has been collated with great care and all. But in almost every place, politics and real estate are too much intertwined.
Yeah.
And politics can impact any time, as we have seen in the past, and it keeps on happening. Either political decisions, regulatory decisions, or political interference also, we can say. Especially when a top-notch person themselves could be, a politician also dabbling in real estate themselves. So in that sense, how do you take this data to be concrete something, because it can be changed by political interference or regulatory changes at any point in time? How do you look at the political risk associated with this data in terms of real estate?
We have a saying at Cherry: if you torture the data enough, it will confess to anything. So you always need to be a little bit skeptical of the quote unquote studies and information that you see. That being said, I think the more information you have about a local market that you're investing in, the better off you're going to be, because politicians can change course all the time. But there are now companies that are recording the meeting minutes from a city council meeting or a provincial meeting, and then they are taking that data and putting it into structured format so you can analyze it. That's something that has only happened in the last 12 months. So you might be able to know if they're thinking about introducing a rent control bill, or changing the zoning requirements for particular buildings, or changing affordability requirements if you build a residential tower. It's very good to know that information so that you can understand what are the odds of the potential success of getting your permits approved and your building built, number one, and then making the income of that building actually be profitable, number two. But it's also a way to win over community buy-in. So if you have a lot of that information and you know that in this area where you're trying to build, there's a shortage of green space. If you took part of the land and wanted to create a park, now you have a public-private partnership with the government, you have a better chance of approval in the building. So just more information and more preparation is always best.
Absolutely. So in a nutshell, what is it that you want to tell people about what you do about real estate data as such?
Yeah, number one, that the data universe has never been bigger, but the things that you should be focusing on has never been more focused, narrow, and smaller, because your investments don't need to be vast across the S&P 500 or the FTSE, right? If you're investing in real estate, your focus is by its nature very purposely very narrow and hyper local. So the more information you can find about that area where you're looking to buy property or manage property or build property, the better off you're going to be. Obviously, we do that at Cherry. But if you're just looking for advice, right, and you're just getting started, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I always want to be helpful.
Absolutely. And how do people reach out to you to get things to understand things better? Perhaps also become your client if they are big guys.
LinkedIn is always the first stop. It's the only social platform I really spend a lot of time on, and I respond to every message. So just find me, Kevin Shtofman, on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.